the marriage is supposed to last for your whole life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you expect this relationship to last for your entire life, you shouldn't be worried about someone taking part of your money when you split up.
Welcome back to the Eternal Companions podcast. We're your hosts, Scott and Sarah.
On this podcast, we share the secret to developing and maintaining a long-lasting and fulfilling relationship. On this episode, we are going to be talking about goal setting, right? It's the new year. Everyone's setting New Year's resolutions. It's a tradition, at least here in America. I'm not really sure if it is globally, but shout out to our global listeners. So we're talking about goal setting as it relates to a relationship, right? You can set your individual goals about, I want to lose 20 pounds this year, but as a relationship needs goals as well, right? And there's going to be different categories that we're going to go through today about the goals you can set.
Let's talk about why this is important, because okay, thank you for agreeing. I think that goals can be really scary for people, especially around New Year's, because you probably have set plenty of goals in the past that you have abandoned, right? And it doesn't need to be scary to have goals, and you should have goals in your relationship. Otherwise, it will become stagnant, or it could even regress, that being the success of your relationship. And as you mentioned, you can have personal goals for all sorts of things. So why wouldn't you have goals for your relationship and your marriage?
Exactly. Goals help people progress. In every industry, experts talk about setting goals. Right? In anything that you want to be a high performer, right? Which is kind of a weird term for a relationship.
But I want to be a high-performing relationship.
Yeah, me too, right? I want it to last long. I want this to be happy.
Right.
And so you set goals. And before we get into those different categories and ways or things you can do to set goals together, the first step is to have a shared vision, right? Kind of a broader look. And that can just be like, hey, do you want to have kids?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, do you want to be rich? Do you want to be poor? Like,
Yeah.
do we share a vision? Where do we want to live? That sort of thing. And then, we get more specific into the goals. Goals become things like when and how, basically. And so I guess let's start off with what are some of the questions you can ask each other or ways you can develop and plan financial goals for your relationship.
I think that is a really great place to start, because if things are not aligned financially, things are going to go downhill fast. So I appreciate you starting with that one. I would say that some of the things that you need to be aware of financially together include how much money you're making, and we can talk about these more specifically, but these are my top level ideas. How much money you're making, how much money you need to make to achieve your lifestyle goals or vision that you've established together, when you want to retire, and like what type of education you want to pursue for yourself and for your children.
What was the first one you said? Do you remember?
How much money you do make, how much money you need to make.
Just the first one.
Sorry.
How much money you do make as a couple.
As a couple.
Right? Sometimes both parties are bringing in revenue.
Right.
Sometimes only one is. Hopefully.
At least
one is somehow. And that is shared knowledge.
Yes.
You're
in a successful relationship. That's what we're saying here.
Right? If you're married, the marriage is supposed to last for your whole life. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you expect this relationship to last for your entire life, you shouldn't be worried about someone taking part of your money when you split up. You want to combine your finances, right? Joint checking account, direct deposit from everyone into this checking account.
Yeah.
It makes things so much easier.
We've tried it the other way when we first got married, just because it was difficult to combine everything. We both had checking accounts.
We were kind of lazy too. It's like you have to go to the bank, you have to do things.
Especially because we were at different banks. But as soon as we determined that it would be in our best interest to combine everything, I feel like that is what truly kind of pushed us forward in terms of achieving our financial goals, because we both had eyes on the full amount of money that we had access to, and so we were able to make joint decisions on how to allocate that money properly.
Or make more responsible decisions.
Oh yeah.
There isn't someone who is unaware of maybe if there's a small number in the checking account right now.
Right.
There also isn't someone who thinks, oh, the other person isn't going to see if I buy this.
Right.
So I'm going to make this purchase, right?
Right.
There's accountability and responsibility
Right.
in sharing finances, as well as teamwork and trust.
Absolutely. And I like what you said earlier about it is like, it's not just shared knowledge. I don't think you said this, but I interpreted it. It's like a shared resource as well. So even if one person isn't contributing to the number in that account, it is still their money if you are a married couple.
Right. They're contributing elsewhere.
Exactly.
It's not like we're on two different teams here.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. That's my point.
So knowledge of how much you have, share your finances, right? And then knowledge of what you need or what you want, right? This is a goal. And so questions to ask are kind of related to other topics, but you can ask things like, when do we want to retire? And that can help you look into a retirement fund or account and how much needs to start going into that, or into different investment opportunities and assets that you can get. And that will kind of guide those goals, right? You can make goals that are, this year or this quarter, I want to open a retirement account, right? By the end of 5 years from now, we want to have X amount of dollars contributed to our retirement account.
Right.
Specifics like that.
Right. And then you can take it a step further and say, okay, we know that this is the goal. How are we going to achieve that? How are we going to achieve the X amount of dollars in the retirement account within 5 years? Yeah.
There's maybe someone needs to get a different job or a promotion, right? Maybe you start a side hustle, right? There's Amazon resellers.
Yeah,
crazy
drop shipping. Amazon goes crazy. It could be like just looking at the overall spending that you both have eyes on and noticing, hey, we really spent a lot on a trip last year or on Christmas or on Taco Bell. Let's reallocate all of that into the 401k or into a different financial goal that you might have.
The question could be like, imagine if we took all of that money that we spent at Taco Bell and we put it into a retirement account. In 30 years from now, how much would that be?
How much Taco Bell could that buy us?
Exactly. Even more, it multiplies the amount of Taco Bell that you have access to.
That's what really matters. A good time to air out the dirty laundry, is when you are setting these goals as a couple. So if there's been problems that you've been noticing, you're starting to get a little bit perturbed with one another. Is that how you use the word perturbed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Irked, maybe?
Yeah, if you're getting irked with one another, now is a really great time to sit down and actually lay out what the issue is and kind of an action plan and set some goals to match up with the action plan.
Yeah, you brought something up that I was doing. I was being mean recently.
Yeah, you were being mean.
What was I doing?
I remember what you were doing. Okay, so
I remember too.
should I give the example?
Yeah, yes, I can do it.
Okay,
I was asking for her opinion when I didn't want it.
Yeah, what's that about?
I would say in my head, I think we should feed her now. And I say, hey, do you think we should feed her now? And then Sarah would say something like, maybe in 30 minutes. And I'd say, no, I think we should do it now.
And then I said, it pisses me off when you ask for my opinion and then you don't want it. Like, you just keep doing whatever you want to do anyway. Because it wasn't just a one-time thing. This was 15 times a day.
Yeah, it happened a lot. All right, after a brief interruption, we're back with a special guest. So, we were talking about how there was a specific example that I was doing something, it was bothering you. You brought it up. We didn't really set a specific goal to fix it.
You just said, I'll try to be better.
Yeah, it wasn't like, okay, I'm going to do it 3 less times per day. Right?
Yeah,
because,
that's ridiculous.
You can't really make a smart goal with, a relationship and emotional things.
Right.
You don't know how many times it's going to happen, right? And it turns things it turns your relationship into science.
Which is not fun.
Yeah, you don't want that really either. So don't get too caught up on the numbers, I guess, when it's things like that. But absolutely bring it up. And then if someone says something about you that's bothering them, don't get defensive, right? It's bothering them.
And that's their truth.
That's true, exactly.
Yeah, that's true to them, and it may not seem valid to you. It doesn't matter. That's what they're experiencing. So that was our example of like a checkpoint that we had. And some other examples of things that maybe you're going to make a goal towards is like, hey, I've noticed that we haven't been spending a lot of quality time together. Let's set a goal to go on one date together every month. Yeah. Just us, no kids, no phones, whatever it is. You can make it as customizable to you as you'd like.
Yeah. Some other example is maybe let's take off the same days off of work.
Right.
This quarter, right? 3 days in a row, something like that, just so we can spend time with each other.
Right.
I find that you don't even need to have a trip.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, going on a trip or a vacation can sometimes put even greater strain on a relationship.
Yeah, if you're not in a really awesome spot, there's nothing. Oh, I know. There's nothing more stressful than traveling.
Yeah, so take some time off to just hang out, like maybe catch up on errands together and spend some time together and make it fun, even though it's just normal menial things that you're doing.
Yeah. Another great thing that you could potentially consider is, hey, are we having problems that are significant enough that we should consider going to couples counseling together this year or this month? And if so, making a plan to make that happen. Okay, you're going to look up counselors. I will check with our insurance. Like, make it happen together. If you're deciding to go to couples counseling, the worst way you can start off is saying, okay, figure it out and let me know when it is.
Yeah.
That is the worst.
The next worst is, hey, I made us an appointment.
Oh, gosh. It's like, that's just, no. You need to, like, both
that's a joint decision.
Put in effort to make it happen, too. Our sweet baby is really excited. I mean, the viewers can see that, but for people listening, that might be a little confusing.
Yeah, that's a bubbly, drooly little baby that you're hearing. All right, well, any other thoughts about, those relationship type of goals?
I think that you should try to set those goals or have checkpoints on them at least quarterly. For us, it's almost weekly that we're like, hey, how are you doing? Like, we have checkpoints very often together, and they become very casual when you do them so often. But if you haven't checked in with your significant other in a while, make sure to do it at least quarterly and make it a little bit more official.
Exactly. I was going to say an official, family council.
We are checking in.
That you can set a date, you can put it on the calendar, and then everyone, because it's official, you're going into it with the right mindset.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Rather than sometimes if it's just out of the blue, it can catch people off guard if they're not used to that sort of discussion, and you can get defensive, or it can turn into an argument rather than a productive conversation.
Right. Another thing that I've implemented, and I don't know if you notice that I do this, is that when I have something that's on my mind, I'll come to you and I'll say, are you open to some constructive criticism right now? Mm-hmm. Or are you open to have a serious conversation? And 9 out of 10 times you're like, yes. And the 1 out of 10 time you're like, not right now because I'm in the middle of something, but in 30 minutes, let's talk. And that can let somebody know too, like, hey, I do have something that's serious on my mind and I do need your undivided attention right now.
Absolutely. And if you are in a bad mood and your partner comes up to you and asks, like, hey, are you open to some criticism right now? Say no.
Yeah, be like, I don't want to right now.
Say, hey, I'm not in a good mood, so this probably won't be the best time to do this, right? Let's do it later. Write down your thought. I do want to hear what you have to say. I want to improve our relationship. But if we try right now, it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to be fair if we try it right now. So that's my tip and my secret.
That's a great tip.
Thank you.
Another topic that is a good one to bring up as a relationship and set goals about is the household, the physical household.
The one that you actually live in.
Exactly. The place where you live. And the vision part, we may have hit this a little bit, but, where do our families live? is moving in the cards for us, or is that something we want to do? And so I think it's important to set, specific household goals, right? And that could be one, I think probably priority number one is financially related.
You're right.
Can we afford this housing right now? Is there a better housing situation that we want that we can reasonably afford? The finances of it, how much does it cost to live? And I guess along with that, also probably safety.
Yeah.
Safety is an important consideration. So the location we live in, safe, is it good for our other goals, right? If you have a goal to start a family, that's something you might want to start thinking about a little more.
Right. And going along with that is space. Is this home, logistically suitable for our needs? Not just do we like how the house looks and where it is, but are there enough bedrooms? Has there been a life change where you're both working from home at this point? There may, that is my point, is these conversations can't just happen one time, because things are always changing. We bought this house and it was huge for us when we first bought it, because we came from a tiny place.
Yeah. Well, we didn't. Did you work? You were still leaving the house to work, right?
I was working from home only because of the pandemic, but it was a temporary situation.
I wasn't working here either.
You were still in college.
I was a student.
Which is crazy. Wow. And then, as time has progressed, we've both graduated from college. We have career jobs, things of that nature. We both found ourselves working from home. And we added a second dog. And we had a baby. So now this house that was perfect for our needs 4 years ago is starting to not work at all. And if we don't have conversations about that, nothing is ever going to get done about that problem.
Exactly. And then I guess that means the goals are, hey, we want to move by the end of 2024.
Right.
So we need a down payment, right? Or we need to save up enough for movers and a new deposit, right? Depending on what your situation is.
There may need to be maintenance done on the home. And that doesn't just have financial implications, that has scheduling implications. Who's going to take care of making sure that the HVAC guy comes? Who's going to schedule house showings? And this also goes for if you're not moving, maybe you've just noticed, hey, we do need to replace the roof. We need a new washer and dryer. Have those conversations and make a game plan, because those are all bigger purchases and time consuming as well. And all of these things will eliminate, all these discussions will eliminate the issue of one person carrying all of that weight.
And that can just cause resentment in a relationship, even if it may not be 100% true.
Yeah.
If it feels like it, right? If it feels like I'm the only person who's doing household maintenance, then I feel like I'm mad.
Then I feel like I'm upset about this. Yeah, exactly. So I think that it's really important to have those conversations very regularly, even if you just bought a house with your significant other. Have the conversation again. Hey, is the house that we just bought still working for you?
Yeah, or how long will it last?
Yeah.
Right. Any other thoughts on household goals and discussion?
I think that within the household goals and discussion, you can also talk about going along with maintenance and stuff, has the house cleaning and maintenance of that level been fair? Are you okay with the way that things are running? And then you have the opportunity to say, yeah, except I hate doing laundry and it ticks me off every single time I have to do it. Can you help with that a little bit more? Or
do a trade.
Yeah, can I trade you? Yeah, and so just having those conversations of are things feeling fair to you right now? Are you burdened in some way? I think is really important.
Yeah, and it can be useful to create a tool, right?
Yeah.
If it's not coming naturally quite yet, you can create a chore chart.
Yeah.
Or you could use we have a really cool, not a sponsor, product called the Skylight Calendar, where you can assign chores to people on different days. You can set chores, maybe things like replace the air filter.
That are every 3 months.
Yeah, it's every 3 months. I don't remember what was the last date I replaced the air filter, so now I can set a recurring date. But yeah, that's a good tool that you can use to split chores.
There's another tool that I have always found to be interesting. We haven't needed to use this because we naturally have a very even split, but I think they're called fair play cards. Have I told you about them before?
I don't think I've heard about these.
It's like a deck of cards, and they have tons of different things written on them, each of them, and each of the cards is kind of like a household responsibility, like paying the bills, holiday magic, driving the kids to school, sweeping, mopping. These are all different cards, and you sit down with your partner and you assign them into 2 piles. And like, okay, I'm in charge of the holiday magic. You're in charge of all the car maintenance, you know, and you divvy up the cards, and then at the end you look at the stack and you see, okay, you have this many cards and I have this many cards. That's a problem. What can we reallocate to me?
Yeah,
And
that's cool.
and that kind of can help you realize too how many tasks may be flying under the radar that you're doing that I'm completely unaware of, but it's taking up your mental load. You know what I mean?
Does sound really neat.
Yeah, maybe we could do it just for fun.
Just to see.
Just to see. Maybe there's things we should be doing that we're not doing.
And maybe also, you know, it's good to realize that maybe there shouldn't be an even split.
We've so far talked about financial goals, household goals, and like almost relationship goals. I mean, these are all relationship goals, but like relationship
Emotional
dynamic.
connection, yeah.
Yeah, emotional connection goals. I think that there are tons of other goals you can set that I would label kind of just like as a miscellaneous category. Some of these goals may include like more mental health goals. Like, how are you doing mentally? Do you need to do counseling, medication this year? Or I'm saying this year just because I'm thinking of the new year, but it could be within whatever time frame you're speaking about. But just like a mental health check-in with your partner.
Yeah, that's a
Could
great
be a great
idea.
one.
You may have recently, you know, discovered a mental condition that you weren't aware of previously. Yeah, and we might talk about that more in a different episode.
Yeah, we both have experience with that. So, yeah, you can definitely be checking in with your partner about that and just how their care of their mental health is going. And that may be a good time to bring up, hey, I'm feeling really overstimulated, or I'm feeling like I may need a weekend away, or where you need more support from your partner. That's a great way to bring up those conversations.
Yeah. Another, one of these miscellaneous categories that you can have a discussion about and set goals about is education, right? Maybe someone wants to get a master's degree, right? And this is probably more relevant for people who have maybe been married or in a relationship for a long time.
Right.
School was a while ago, right? If you're still in school or if you just got out of school, you've probably thought about continued education a little bit more recently. But maybe in your financial discussion, you came to the conclusion that we need a promotion, right?
Yeah.
Someone needs a raise. And so there's a potential that you could look into a master's degree,
Right.
Or an upper graduate program.
Or even certifications.
Yeah, right. Third-party certifications are super helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that a subtopic within education is related to your children's education, and not just their college education, but their present education. Are you happy with the education that they are receiving where they're at? Maybe it's public school, maybe it's private school, maybe you want to switch that up, maybe you determined you want to homeschool, and then you have to look into the financial implications and the time commitments of any of those options. Maybe you have to drive your kid to a school further away.
Yeah.
Maybe you're deciding to homeschool and someone's going to lose income. All of those topics need to be discussed. I think that a lot of these marital issues that I hear about happen because things are not discussed and people are on autopilot. Mm-hmm. I'm going to send my kid to public school because that's the obvious choice. Or whatever it is. I'm going to do all the cooking and cleaning because that's the obvious choice. Like, no, it's not. know?
I think decision making should be intentional.
Yeah.
You should say, why are we making this decision?
Right.
Why is it happening this way? And should it continue or should there be a change?
Yeah.
Right? That should always be something that you're thinking about, intentional behind your decision making. And that way, if you relate that back to what we started, right? If you have a vision, you know where you want to be as a couple, as a family, then that kind of makes it easy to have, to have an intention behind your decision making.
Yeah. I do have one I do have one more thing that I'd like to discuss, and that is I would love your opinion on if you start having those like visionary conversations with your partner and you figure out that you are not aligning. What would be your advice?
So in this hypothetical, are we married?
You're married.
Married for like a little while now.
Yeah, you're like a young married couple.
Young married couple. We didn't really did we discuss these before? Now it's changed.
You were kind of dumb. You were kind of dumb, just to be honest
didn't-
about the situation. You didn't really discuss what you should have discussed, or you did, but not in depth. You're like, yeah, we want kids. That's it, you know? Or, yeah, we are both Christian. Or, yeah, we should have a house. But, like, things start to not add up once you get into the actual when, how, why details. What would you do?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I want to preface it by saying it's definitely a case-by-case basis.
Totally.
Right? Some things are bigger for some people than they are for other people.
That's a really good point.
And so, of course, this will be different for everyone. I would say that there...
Oh. Thank you for sharing.
I would say that there is probably a reason why you got married.
I hope.
Yeah, right. Hopefully there's a great reason, and probably it's love, right? And
I hope,
other
again.
things that go along with that as well. But I would always try to save a marriage, right? And I'm not saying that a misalignment is like a deal breaker immediately, but it can be down the line.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you know, there definitely has to be compromise. There has to be a lot of discussion. I don't know. I can't really give a lot of specifics. What do you think?
I think two things. One thing that I think is that the earlier you catch these misalignments, the better and the least dramatic they will end up being, because there is time to realign or come to a compromise. But for example, let's talk about kids. If you were under the impression that your significant other wanted kids and you were going to pick up the conversation 10 years into the relationship, you get there and then they say, oh, I changed my mind 5 years ago and I didn't tell you. That's a much bigger problem than if 5 years ago you had the conversation and came to some sort of compromise or understanding. So having these conversations extremely regularly is very important to the health of a marriage or a relationship.
Definitely. Especially in items like that where there's a
Time
deadline.
limit.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing that I would like to mention as it relates to misalignment is you can't change the other person. You can only change your behavior or your reaction to the behavior or the idea. So if you came to me and you said, I don't want kids, I should never think, how can I make Scott want kids?
Right.
How can I coerce Scott into having kids? All that I can do is say, okay, how can I resolve that within myself where we're not going to have kids? Or, you know, change my own perspective. And you can say, like, are you willing to compromise at all and have one or adopt or whatever it is? But I should never go in with the assumption that I can change you.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, so that's our kind of a wrap up of the topics that you can set goals on and have conversations about. And of course, that's not everything. We didn't cover all the topics that are going to come up, but the key here is to have discussions. The key is to have discussions.
Okay, we've tried to say this sentence 12 times. If you hear things in the background, our daughter is trying to sing you a song. Just say it.
The key is to have discussions and have them regularly. I think that quarterly is great.
I think so too. And if you find that that is too far apart, make it earlier. Make it,
sooner.
every relationship is different, you know? And so I think that that's really important to start. And if you have been having these conversations, great job.
Yeah.
Awesome
And,
job.
You know, last point about that.
Yeah.
Maybe at the new year, because traditionally that's when we set goals.
Right.
The first meeting of the year is goal setting.
Yep.
And the rest of them are checking in.
Yeah, how are you doing?
How are these things going? Have we kept to our goals? Do we need to switch our goal? Do we need to change our behavior to better meet our goal? And just a check-in.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And if you are excited about having these check-ins, but you're not really super confident in covering all the different topics that you might want to, if you look in the description of this video or this podcast, whichever media you're partaking in, I will have a bunch of questions listed for you so that you can use it as a reference point when you do have these goal-setting conversations with your significant other.
So, good luck with the goal setting. We hope that it helps. We hope it helps you to be aligned. Hope it helps you to feel more unified and like you trust each other and that you're working towards something together. And we would love for you to join us on our next discussion.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode.
Do you have a love story worth sharing? Head to eternalcompanionspodcast.com to be a guest on our show.
And don't forget to check out the show notes.
See you next week.